Welcome to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. LawyerFair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
It is another fine LawyerFair Daily podcast, and we're having a little bit of a startup week this week. We had a great chat with Tamara yesterday from Rebel Kitchen, who are well and truly up and running with their products. And today we're going to speak to a chap who is, well, it's certainly from my perspective, the tender age of 27, but he's already crammed an awful lot in, which we shall talk about in a moment. Welcome, Rishi Chowdurhy.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, as I say, I mean, if anybody wants to follow up on this, and I hope they do, and contact Rishi or look a bit more into what he's doing, you'll notice that the first business was launched at university, Rishi. I mean, the entrepreneurial, it's in your blood.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, I guess, when I see an opportunity, I like to take it. So it keeps me more interested in kind of everything I do, I guess.
Well, clearly from those foundations, you've gone strength to strength, because there are, I was saying to Rishi just before we started recording, one of the joys of doing this podcast is chatting to guests and people who have just so much going on, and there's so much kind of interesting stuff we can discuss. And within 10 minutes, it's quite difficult sometimes to frame it. But we're going to talk about, I mean, you've got 3 or 4 ventures at the moment, Rishi, which we can maybe cover a little bit of all of them. But
Sure.
the one we're going to focus on, I think, is the Incubus project.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just give us a little bit more about, I mean, it involves a large red bus, and I'm going to leave it at that and let you follow up on that.
Okay, so yeah, I'll start off with that then. So a couple of years ago now, in the summer of 2013, I was 3 years into working at a startup called Huddle, who had done fantastically well and grown from about 20 people when I joined to 160. So at that point, I'd kind of realized that it's not really a startup anymore, and I kind of want to get back to the startup roots. So I was looking at other ideas, and one of my friends from Huddle, George, was also kind of on the same wavelength at that time. And after a few beers, and we'd been running an event earlier that evening called Flagons Den, we decided, well, where else can entrepreneurs work from? And we came up with a few different ideas about Airbnb for entrepreneurs, this kind of stuff. And it kind of turned into, well, what if we gave them a mobile workspace like a bus or a boat? We figured out then the boat might be a little bit too far, and decided that a bus was a good idea, and just Googled it. Where do we buy a bus? Made an appointment literally that night.
And where did you buy? Where do you buy a bus?
So we Googled it, and the very top search result that came up was a place called Ensign in Purfleet. Basically, they take old TfL buses and resell them on to the rest of the country or for different purposes. So went down, saw the bus, and we were instantly sold. And at that point, I quit my job, and George joined me soon after. And at that point, we decided, well, okay, so we've got a bus, let's turn it into an office. And we realized that we were in sort of the perfect position to start an incubator, mainly because we had the partners, the corporate partners, we had the relationship with startup founders through previously I'd been working with YHP, and we had done a lot of startup events. And also we had a lot of readers of YHP who were all very early stage startups and needed some more help. So we seemed to have everything in place. We just needed a kind of a place to do it from.
Yeah, and just to be clear, if anybody's not aware, again, you can see Rishi's LinkedIn profile for further information, but YHP is your hidden potential, which again is fascinating. And so just to be clear then, so the incubator is very much targeting 18 to 25-year-olds, is that right?
So it started off 18 to 25-year-olds, and we expanded that to anyone and everyone, really.
Okay.
So it's basically aimed at very early stage startups, so people typically with an idea or a very early stage product built, normally pre-launch, and then we launch it sort of on our program. And that gives us a nice kind of range of startups to work with, but all within the same area. So a lot of the startups need the same help, and then we bring in mentors and workshops and skills-based stuff to that is tailored to their industry.
And is the fact there's a handsome photograph of Rishi and George outside their red bus, and you're both wearing nice high visibility jackets. So it's good to see health and safety is clearly on the agenda.
George is the health and safety manager. He looks after that side of things.
Oh, they're excellent high vis jackets. But by virtue of having a bus, does this mean you're kind of getting out to meet the startups as opposed to being kind of a fixed location?
So it started that the bus was the fixed location, and we had our very first 12-week program was based off the bus. So people would be, myself or George would be in there every day, opening it up in the morning and locking it up at night. And we'd have startups working on the bus, which was fantastic. But as our team grew and as our cohort sizes grew, we decided to get your more traditional officers, let's say, and use the bus for what it's good at, really, driving around, going to events, and being a marketing tool for us, but obviously revenue generation as well.
Yeah.
Having advertising on it, being able to rent it out. And so it is up for use for anyone, but as long as it's startup related and it's helping entrepreneurs and small businesses in some way.
Yeah, interesting. And sorry, you started in 2013,
Yep.
and you've clearly expanded from the initial age round. You've also got some serious partners you're playing with here. I mean, I noticed NatWest, KPMG, but to name two. So
Yep.
there's some serious people you're partnering with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been very lucky in the sense that we've had a good network before we started this, and that was through years of literally going to networking events and having free beers and pizza and pretending we're working. But it's come in handy in the end. And yeah, we've had a lot of companies like NatWest and KPMG come on board to also support these entrepreneurs. It's nice going and seeing companies who are a lot bigger but still care about the smaller business coming through and really do spend a lot of time and give up a lot of their resources to help the next generation of businesses coming through.
No, it's interesting. I mean, KPMG are going to be guests actually on this podcast shortly, and they are really interested in the smaller space
Yeah,
in a way that you might not have imagined with who KPMG normally represent.
absolutely.
And clearly they're partnering with you as another step in that direction. Rishi, I'm going to ask a question actually that I haven't really primed you about, which I try not
Yeah,
to do with guests, but it just sprang into my mind
sure.
because we had last week we had a guest, Julia Groves, who's the founding or the chairman of the UK Crowdfunding Association, and crowdfunding
Yeah,
is an issue. I know you raised cash on it, but what I'm particularly interested in is actually your experience because you went on one platform where it didn't quite work, and then you ended up raising it on
yeah.
another. So I'd be interested just to get your views on that experience, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So, crowdfunding, I guess, was quite a buzzy little thing a couple of years ago, and everyone wanted to do something on a crowdfunding platform. And actually, when we had the idea for the bus, we thought crowdfunding would be great for this. I'm sure loads of people we've spoken to have obviously said it's a great idea, they love it. So I'm sure some will back it, right? So we just put it up on Indiegogo, which is a great platform, but we didn't do any preparation. We put it up there, sent out some tweets and Facebook posts, and asked people to share it, and didn't really get much traction. One thing we realized was that our rewards weren't really suited for the platform, and it probably wasn't a product like you could do rewards kind of system with. So we learned, we kind of just failed at that campaign, I guess, and there was, I think 3K of the 30K pledged, which all went back. And so after that, we decided, right, we'll do a bit more preparation, see if we can raise some angel investment money. And once we had those conversations, we thought, actually, we got so much press out of the Indiegogo campaign, even though it didn't really go very far. A lot of people heard of us off the back of that. So at that point, we decided let's look into other crowdfunding platforms, and we knew Seeders. One of our investors actually said they're very close to Seeders, and they would invest in us as part of a Seeders crowdfunding campaign. So we went and had a chat with them, realized that actually we knew a couple of people from there as well, and went with it. But it took a good 2 months of preparation. and then spent the month that it was up on Cedars. We spent day and night just working on it and reaching out to investors and people like that. So a lot of people say once you get the 30-40%, you're fine and it will just roll over to 100. But no, it's still a lot of work and a lot of pushing out every day.
Yeah, well, no, that was interesting. I was interested in getting your the story of that because I think two things there. First of all, you've got to make sure it's the right platform for what you want to raise,
Yeah,
and secondly, you've definitely got to get the marketing right because if you hit the ground not running, then it's likely to
yeah,
die a very very slow death, isn't it?
absolutely.
So that's interesting. And the final point that I'd like to just clarify there as well, I think that people also think startups, they can get stuck in, they can get partnerships straight away. But you've shown here that the groundwork you've put in previous ventures or networking events is starting to bear fruit in terms of partnerships, and also, frankly, in terms of connections with people like Cedars. It is a long game, isn't it? It's no overnight success.
Oh, not at all. It really has taken years of preparation, and this is since I started my entrepreneurial projects. Let's say, I mean, all the learnings from my very first business to now, have counted to making us what we are today. So it is definitely a long game, and there's no kind of shortcuts to it, I guess. But
No. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, listen, you've been a star, and there's loads more we could have talked about. Tech City Tours, for example, is interesting. But so anybody wants to find out more about Rishi, about the project, incubuslondon.com, I think is the correct website domain. Is that right?
that's the one. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the one. You can find out loads more. Rishi, thanks so much.
Not at all.
And good
Thanks,
luck.
Andrew.
Thanks a lot. That was the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. There will be lots more tomorrow. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes or visit us on the LawyerFair.co.uk website.